All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Well, that's nice. All right, everybody. So we're in a deep discussion of emptiness, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry, not sorry. Um, we have these next couple classes are incredibly deep and incredibly detailed. So don't worry if you don't understand. Um, the idea of this class and the next class really is to give you the tools that you need to actually get your brain to like shake it up. And what I mean by that is that when we say things like, first of all, hi, this is class 7 ACI 12, just in case if anyone cared and you're brand new. um, when we say things like everything's coming from my seeds, oh, that's coming from me, that's a very clear way of like just repeating the words, right? People repeat the words of emptiness all the time. And that's very, it's good. Of course, there's no problem about that, right? Like just having those words in your mind, like when you see something, why do I have to see this? Why do I have to see this happening to me? Why do I have to see some kind of negative experience or some kind of positive experience? Having these kind of mantras running in our mind will eventually sink in so that you're not doing what I call like a retrospective analysis, right? Like you had a bad day, you had someone say something mean to you, you had some kind of negative emotion, whatever it was. And then you go, huh, I wonder why I have to see that. And then you start analyzing, well, I must have planted that seed in the past. Great. I must have been doing this. Oh, I can see. Oh, I don't have to go very far to see why I had to experience that. Um, One of my good friends um, recently had open heart surgery, and I was talking to him, and he's maybe 75 ish, 70, 75. And he said, we were just talking about the surgery. I wasn't even talking about emptiness. I wasn't even thinking like, oh, I wonder why you have to see that, or why do I have to see that? Right. I was just connecting with him. And he said, he said, I don't have to go that far to understand why I had to have open heart surgery. And I was like, well, I don't see you at like why? And he said when he was a kid, he used to enjoy taking like these little like he bought these like little rifle guns, and he would try to just shoot animals. Like he enjoyed it. And he remembers the time that he stopped. Like there was a big owl in the tree, like super high up, and he didn't think he was going to hit it. So he shoots his gun and like hits it, like he's aiming at it, hits the bird, and then the bird just like falls, right, and falls down the tree, right, and then lands on the ground right in front of him, mostly close to death, right, like shaking on the ground. And he watched this bird die, and he was like, "I'm never doing this again." Right? He was like, "I'm done with this fun game," which wasn't fun anymore. You know, and he said those years where he just shot animals for fun, he felt like was the karmic correlation to being healthy one day and the next day waking up and the doctor saying, well, you need to have a triple bypass surgery, right? He had his whole chest ripped open, right? But that's a retrospective analysis, right? He's going back in time. He had something happen to him and he thinks about, oh, well, what did I do to cause this? Right. And he can go through that whole process. But is that emptiness? Right. You know, is that, what does that do to get you to understand emptiness? Right. That's understanding cause and effect. Like, how do you push yourself into that experience? How do you push yourself closer to that? And so that's what we're doing in today's class and tomorrow's and next week's class is we're learning all different types of analysis that can push you closer to the present moment to understand emptiness. Thank you, Kathy, for the polite description of why her camera is not on. So, how do we get to a place where, something happens and then sometime in the future we go, oh, why did I have to see that? Or, oh, there are many ways that I can, that this moment could have been experienced, right? But you're like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 3 days, 10 years too late. In the sense, not too late in the sense of like, it's not good to do that work. But the moment happened, and then you're reflecting on it. You're thinking in the past. You're thinking of the past, and you're analyzing about what happened. And how do we shrink that? Right. So the idea here is, how do we get our emptiness understanding more and more powerful, more and more present? So it's not just oh, I'm going to write my memoirs, right? 5 days later, I'm like, I wonder why I had to see that. Let me tell myself the story of why I have those seeds to see that thing. Good thing to do. Memoirs are awesome. Understanding those things, is part of the path. Right. And Rosalia just made an interesting good point. She says, but he also had good karma to have a successful surgery because sometimes the surgeries don't work. Right. And he was actually talking about afterwards of how blessed he felt, of how he felt taken care of. My friend took care of everybody during the 3-year retreat at Diamond Mountain 12 years ago. Right. So he had a lot of good karma going off too. But how do we take those stories, right? Which, by the way, unless you're a Buddha, you really can't tell yourself and know what the cause of something was. I didn't say this to my friend, of course, because that's not important, because he knew he had created some bad karma when he was a kid and he experienced it. He experienced that bad karma ripening. Now, was that the exact seed? I don't know. I'm not a Buddha. I can't tell you. But that doesn't matter, right? It's what matters is he's experiencing in that way, and it's creating a kind of um, change in his behavior, right? He's like, well, he actually changed the behavior when he was a kid. He's like, I don't want to kill animals anymore. That sucked. But then he also, he was reflecting on something that happened like 60 years ago. How do we bring that those how do we bring that closer to the present moment? Right? How do we bring it so that when we're experiencing something like, you know, in that moment, that we could be doing that those kinds of analyses, right? So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to give you a gazillion arguments of why what you're experiencing isn't self-existent, right? Isn't out there self-standing by itself. And then you keep practicing them, right? You just keep over and over reviewing them so that you develop a habit of thinking this way. Like you understand more and more, okay, what you're experiencing right now has to be coming from our previous seed. And what I'm experiencing right now is not out there on its own by itself, right? So then you can start having those aha moments, not 60 years later when you're having open heart surgery, which is good. There's no problem, right? But how do we push ourselves closer to the quote present moment, right? To get our mind to go, oh, wait. What's happening right now is not what I think is happening. Because then you can start triggering more and more realizations of where your world is coming from. And hopefully you can then trigger Chuchok, the highest Dharma, where you look at something like a pot on the stove, which is the classical example. When you look at something and you realize you never were looking at the pot, you were only looking at parts of a pot. In fact, you weren't even looking at parts of a pot. You were just looking at parts that you were then putting together to become the parts of the pot or the entire pot. Like the parts aren't part of the whole. Those parts were never part of the pot. So translators, I'm sorry today is going to be difficult and I will try to give you breaks. So if you could trigger that experience where you see your mind for the very first time putting all those parts together, right? The parts that were never part of the pot to begin with. Yet somehow you created the pot. Like somehow you put all of those parts together in your mind, and a luminous image opened up in your mind and then went, oh, hey, there's a pot. I can boil some water. But those parts themselves are not part of the pot, and they never were part of the pot. Oh, well, Tim, the pot is made of a stick, a roundness, kind of like a, you know, that has a space for stuff, right? It has a kind of golden color, has a round, all of these things. Those are parts of the pot, right? They're parts of the pot after it became a pot. Those parts were not there until you made it a pot. So how did the parts make it in? How did your eyeball make it into a pot? I looked at the parts. Well, okay, you looked at some indicators, but how did you make it a pot? It wasn't a pot till you made it a pot. And the parts of the pot weren't part of it until you did a retrospective analysis. You already saw it as a pot, right? Oh, well, what if I didn't know it was a pot and I just saw some, you know, have you ever had that experience where you look at an object and you're like, what the hell is that? Like you don't even know what it is. Right. And then your brain starts searching for possible answers. Right. Not a banana, not a knife, right? Not a garlic press, right? What is it? Right. And you keep trying to find what it is, right? And that glitch, it kind of feels like a glitch in the matrix, at least to me anyway, where you're just like your brain is just trying to put something on this object that you can't figure out what it is. But I'm going to suggest that the parts were never there until it became a pot. And then you can say, well, I saw some parts. But how did those parts become a pot if the parts weren't there to begin with? We're going to be very Nagarjuna today. All right. So my apologies ahead of time for the difficulties. Just let your brain absorb. Just absorb the information. Just let it, you know, I don't know, circle around in there for a while. And eventually it will start making more and more sense, and it will start bringing you closer to this particular moment, like the present moment, the moment you're in right now. Because the moment you think you're in, you're not in. And what the hell does that have to do with anything? Like, so what? Great, thanks, Tim. I'm not in the moment that I thought I was in. Okay, great. But it seems to work that way. And what can you do when you realize the moment you're in is not the moment that it ever was? Maybe you can start planting different seeds to bend reality in a new way. I don't know. We'll talk about it. Okay. So this class goes on a major trip, as I said. So here we go. So when the Buddha described our world, when the Buddha described, let's say, what makes up your world, like what are the parts, right? What are the parts of things that come together to create, let's say, you? Like he described them as, like, we've heard the words probably in English. You probably heard the word heaps. You probably have heard the words like aggregates, right? Your five aggregates, your five heaps. What the hell is that? Right? It's a bad translation, in my opinion. It's a bad translation that just kind of stuck. Like when people say, oh, the Four Noble Truths, right? Almost every other Buddhist group will say the Four Noble Truths, and it's completely inaccurate. I mean, sure, it's noble, I guess. Like being an Arya would be a noble thing, right? But it doesn't explain what the heck they are. Like those four truths they come from a direct experience. They come from a direct experience of seeing emptiness, quote, as it is. And then you realize these four truths and the four aspects of each of those truths about what's happening in the world, like what's happening for us in this suffering life. This suffering cycle is called cycles, right? And so the Buddha also described five pongpos, right? They're good, like piles of things. Like heaps is not a bad word. It's just we don't use it very much in English. It's like five collections of stuff, like five piles of things. You probably heard of them, right? There's the pile of physical matter, form, right? Matter. Then the pile of feelings. Then the pile of discrimination, your capacity to decide what things are, where they belong. There's a pile of other things. They're just called other things. And then there's a pile of things called the consciousnesses. Okay. And they kind of go in order from a most obvious, like most physical thing that you can like perceive, to more and more subtle. So you have your, you have your physical body, right? Then you have your feelings, like then you have your discrimination, then you have these other mental functions, other factors, and then you have just consciousness itself, awareness in general, mainly. I'm getting out of many arguments right now just by saying that. Okay. So these piles of things that we experience as in the world, and this is what the Buddha describes in the Abhidharmakosha, in the first turning of the wheel. The 5 skandhas. Here are the 5 things that the world's made up of, the 5 pumpos, the 5 piles, the 5 heats, all of these things. And somehow those are the things that we think are self-existent, mainly, right? Like these are things that just appear to us as our natural world, like the natural thing. And so the Buddha was like, okay, here's all the things in the world. And then once you understand all the different categories of things, like these are just categorizations of your experience, the experience of you, the experience of your world, right? And then now we have to analyze each of those experiences. Do those things exist by themselves? This is not what the Buddha does in the first turning of the wheel, right? But that's the whole point. The point is, let's describe the whole world first, and then let's say, well, does this work? Right? Does this work? Does this stand up against the tests? Like in the scientific method, you're like, all right, well, I want to prove to everybody that what I've described in the physical world is true. Okay, so I run an experiment. I make the experiment and then I come up with some results. And then other scientists go, oh, good job, Tim. You just proved something about quantum physics. You just showed us. Now it doesn't become true until other scientists can replicate your results. This is what we do in science class in 7th grade, right? You like chemistry class, you're like making all different kinds of things. Half the kids, it doesn't work because they're not paying attention. Another quarter of the kids break the test tubes, and and then you have like the really serious science girl in the class. And I'm just saying because we had one, right, who like gets irritated when anyone gets within her space. She's like, I'm going to make the experiment work, right? She wears the glasses, right? It's like the nerdy scientist, right? And then they don't even get the exact answer, right? But they're close. And then you have to write a report, which is annoying, about why didn't I get the right answer? What went wrong? Well, Billy spit into my test tube, right? Or I put 5 drops in instead of 4. Whatever the reason, right? Then you make up some reason why it didn't work. But eventually, that's what the scientific method is about. It's a repeatable procedure that creates repeatable results. And if it works every time, which is kind of a weird thing, but if it works enough of the time, everyone goes, oh, you just proved a new theory, or you just created something replicatable. Great. And then scientists publish it in their magazines, like dinosaurs. We learned all about dinosaurs. This is for my nephew, right? I'm reading it first before I send it to him, right? So I could learn about all the new cool things about dinosaurs that I didn't know, right? Then we put them in little magazines and then we say, oh, okay, great. That's the truth about dinosaurs, right? So that's what the Buddha was doing, right? In the Abhidharma Kosha was saying, all right, there's all these things in the world and we can agree on them. Like, Anastasia, do you have feelings? Like, do you feel good sometimes? Do you feel bad sometimes? Do you feel happy? Do you feel sad? She's like, yeah, sometimes, right? Like, Ken, do you feel sad sometimes? Do you feel happy? You know, so, like, and then I ask everyone in class, and everyone goes, yeah, we can agree on happy. We can agree on sad. We can agree on angry, right? Let me see. Okay. So then, all right, everyone raise your left hand, right? You know, does it feel like a hand, right? Everyone agrees it's a hand, I think, right? You go, if I said, see, I said left hand, everyone raised their left hand. I saw, this is why I like cameras on. Duh. Okay. But right, so you're looking and you're like, everyone goes, okay, we agree that's a hand. It's a physical thing. You know, all right, Francisco, do you discriminate between things? Hmm. Is there a difference between a United Statesian and an estadounidense and a Mexican? Do you make those differences? Well, okay, you have a, oh, shut up. You have a Mexican passport, correct? Okay. I have an American United States passport, right? There's United States and Mexico passports, okay? We're discriminating between people, not in a negative way sometimes, but he's Mexican, I'm from the United States. Great, right? Roxana has a, what kind of passport does she have? I don't know. I don't know if the EU gives passports in Romania now, but she's a Romanian, right? She's a Romanian passport. Okay. Constanza's from Moldova, I think, right? These were making discriminations, right? We're putting things into sets in our mind, right? Me and them, theirs and them, right? That's them and that's those people, right? We make other discriminations. All right. Those are, those people have darker skin, so they're black people, and they have lighter skin, so they're white people. I saw a great video the other day where someone was like, they're just different colors of brown. Like, like humans are actually kind of brown, right? Lighter brown and darker brown, right? There's really no black people and there's no white people. Like, it's ridiculous, right? Like, people aren't the color of night sky, and people are not the color of, white. Like, it's like very few people, right? Where do you go? Oh, thank you, Gina. So we're making these discriminations, right? We make these things, we delineate between this and that, right? So the Buddha told us all about this. Now we learn about all existing things in the universe in the Abhidharma Kosha, all the different categories of things. Wonderful, right? That's what science does. Science looks out onto the mountains and goes, huh, what's going on over there? The sun is about to rise. All these things are happening. Great. But let's describe it. Let's put it in a National Geographic magazine, right? Let's describe the world 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs ruled the earth, right? The last page has pictures of dinosaurs dying when the meteorite hit the earth, right? So those pictures, now they died, right? They lived and they died. They came, they started, they ended. right? So now we have to go, well, is that world that world? And is it always that world? Right. And that's when we start moving into all of these analyses. But you believe your mind, your experience works that way. Physical, I have feelings, I discriminate, all the other 43, 44 mental functions, in your awareness. Like you wake up in the morning and you don't go, my awareness is empty. You just go, oh God, I got to get up again. It's another morning, right? I am me. You don't even think you're yourself. You're just like, you rub your face, you stretch, you pet the cats. You don't think like that. I don't think like that. I get up in the morning and I do all those things. But can we bring our mind closer to what might be happening to trigger these experiences? So we're going to go through all of them. And then you have to think about it. I'm sorry. You have to do meditations. You have to think about it. You have to analyze it. And then cool things start happening. All right. So there is you've probably heard about it, but it's called the four awarenesses. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving our awareness, we're going to give our mind the tools for in four different categories of things to think about. And the first one is about the deep awareness. So it's called the deep awarenesses, right? The deep awarenesses of what four things? The first thing is the body. We're looking at this body. Here's my hand, here's my elbow, here's my hair, right? Still have it, thank God. Here's my nose. So I have an awareness of my body, right? You have an awareness of your own body, you have an awareness of other people's bodies. That's how you interact with people, right? Like if you didn't have an awareness of their body, then how do you have an interaction? So the whole point of this near awareness, excuse me, this deep awareness, is that when you start analyzing the body, you understand that what you think of the body as the body is not the body. Right, Trinity? Yes. She's staring at me. She's like, I'm fat, Tim, and my body is my body, right? See, there she is. Right next to the dinosaurs. So you understand and we've done these analyses before, so this shouldn't be that difficult. It's like, are you the parts of your body or are you the whole of your body? Right? Are you in what part of you makes up you? Right? Are you in your finger? Are you in your nose? Are you in your hand? Are you in your elbow? Right? Well, those are all parts of Tim, correct? Yes, yay. You just saw Tim's nose, right? But if I were to cut off my nose, or that's probably a weird thing to do. Maybe I cut my finger off, right? Okay. And then I have no longer have a finger. So now I have four fingers, right? Was Tim in the finger that he lost? Right? Am I in that finger that I lost? Well, no. I mean, yeah, it might be more difficult to hold on to things, right? But I can do it. I can do it. Like, at what point do I'm just Tim with four fingers, no longer have five fingers. Okay, well, what if I lose my whole hand? Okay, and not end up no fingers, right? Okay. Well, now I can't pick up the cup, right? But maybe I could do, you've seen people that have different types of appendages, right? One of my good friends was born with a really small hand, right? And they work it out, they make things go. So are they any less them because they have a smaller hand or they don't have fingers, right? What part of you is in your body? Where are you? Well, I'm me. I'm all of these things. Well, you're made up of parts. Great. You're made up of some parts. Wonderful. Well, what part has the part of you that's you? Well, it's a conception of me. Okay. All right. So I take away my finger. I take away two fingers. I take away all my fingers. I take away my arm. I take away my other arm, right? I take away my nose, my legs, right? When do you stop? When does Tim stop being Tim? Oh, I'll cut. Now we're gonna cut off my head. All right. It's Halloween coming up. We can do it, right? Like when, at what point, in what cell in my body is Tim involved? Like how many parts of Tim are needed to be there to be a Tim? How many parts of Sandra need to be there to be a Sandra? Right? What if Sandra loses an eye? Okay. What if she loses an ear? Like, when is it no longer her? Right. And so when you can't find you in the parts, but yet you are the parts and you are a whole, but you can't find yourself in it, that's called a deep awareness. Right? Walk around thinking about where Yasheng is, right? Just walk around all day long, right? Where am I? Am I in my arm? Like, anyway, you can do that practice later. Um, so basically, what we're saying is that the body has no nature of its own. And so when you get sick, when you have pains in your body, right? And you're like, oh, my body's sick. Oh, I have some kind of stomach flu, right? Like, I want to get better, right? Now we're moving in the level of feelings, but just stick with me. Somehow we want to keep it going, right? Oh, my stomach has a bug in it. I have a flu, right? We start wanting all of these things, ignorantly. We don't even think, oh, I wonder why my stomach hurts. I had a flu yesterday, so that's why I'm thinking about it. Right? So in what way is that impure, right? I don't even understand my own body when it's not doing body things that I want it to do, right? So what we come to understand is that it has no nature of its own. We're going to skip the question, Sandra, for now. So that analysis of understanding your body has no nature, that's the first deep awareness. The second deep awareness is called feelings. Right? Now we're starting to get more into ourselves, right? Because I can look at Anastasia, I can look at Octavia, and I can say, oh, well, there's some two arms, there's two legs, there's their body, right? And then, but it's hard for me to know about someone's feelings, right? Now we're at the level of feelings, like the deep awareness of feeling. So do our feelings have some kind of nature? Here's the second punpo. Now we're in the heaps, right? Do our feelings have any kind of nature, right? Do they exist by themselves? So now we have to go into each of the aspects of feeling. All right, well, does the essence of feeling is something that existed by itself? What about the cause of the feeling? Does the cause exist by itself on its own? Right? The object that the feeling focuses on, is it out there by itself? The subjective state of mind that the feeling is existing in doesn't exist by itself. Okay, so we have all these parts, right? What caused the feeling? Oh, I got some bad news, right? The feeling itself, that it's in my mind. I sure got all these right. The object towards which the feeling is directly directed. All of these things can be analyzed. Right? All of those things can be put to you can go, what is their nature? What caused me to feel this way? What is the feeling of happy, sad, angry? This is a kind of a fun topic where you could look at the feelings in your body and go, okay, well, where is the feeling? Right? Okay, I have some anger. Ooh, where is the anger in my body? I feel it. Ooh, well, where is that? Then you can start understanding more of its nature. You can go, oh, well, when I get angry, I start feeling tightness, right? I feel like tightness in my throat, or my heart starts pounding. I start having all these different sensations, right? Are those sensations anger? Are those sensations anger? Well, they're parts of the sensation. Well, I have tightness in my throat, my chest feels a certain way, you know, my face is getting red, all of these things. But are any of those things anger? They're the parts of anger. Oh, so tightness in my chest is anger? Tightness in my throat, heat in my body, are all those things anger? But they're parts of the anger. Oh, are they parts of the anger? Okay, well, then all of those things together should always create angry, right? If I put all those parts together, that is anger. That's what it is. Every time I have those things, I get angry. Well, what if I didn't have those things? Would I not have anger? And that's where you need to analyze it. Like, what am I angry at? Oh, I'm angry at the boss. Why am I angry at the boss? Well, the boss told me to do something I didn't want to do, or the boss made me do something that I didn't think was part of my job, or my boss is yelling at me because I didn't do something well enough. Okay. So that boss is that's an angry boss, and I'm getting angry at the angry boss. Yes. Okay. Well, is that boss angry from their own side by themselves? Does everyone experience the boss as angry? Does the boss experience themselves as angry? I don't know. Right. So you start asking these questions, like someone else could be looking at the boss and say, oh, well, actually, the boss's partner's on the other side of the room and is like, I've used this example before, my hero, right? Totally in love. Oh, they're such a great leader. Can't wait to take them home tonight. There you go, Roxana. There you go. I have no picture for that one. Right? So someone else wants to rip off the boss's clothes and make passionate love to them, and the other person sees anger. Okay. Which one is it? Right? And then the feeling that you of anger you have in your body, where is that? This is a great way to get to the emptiness of your feeling. Where in the body do I feel it? I feel it in these three places. Okay, great. Well, what if you took away one of those things? Would you still feel anger? The parts of your anger are not there anymore. Is the tightness in your throat anger? Right? This is a way to stop anger, by the way. Now, if you're really angry, forget it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the worst thing you can do to an angry person who studies the emptiness is to remind them of emptiness while they're angry. You want to watch someone really get angry? you know, I mean, there's a time and place for it, of course, but start analyzing it in yourself. And then you go, okay, so the energy of the anger in my body, is it just energy? Is it just prana? Is it anger in and of itself? What if you stopped that movement of prana? Would you stop the anger? If you had an absence of that movement of the prana in your body, would you have an absence of anger? Right. And that's where you can go with it, because then you can start seeing that anger itself is not self-existent. Right. And all of a sudden you can be like, well, what is that energy? Does it have to be anger? Maybe it's just passion. Maybe it's not any of those things. Right. So each of those pieces of your feelings can be broken down. And then when you can't find the anger, then you go, well, what is this anger? The most annoying thing of anger is that, or any of these feelings, is that you want to have them. You want to justify that you have them. It's kind of the nature of feelings in some way. So, but yeah, that's an analysis you can do. Next, deep awareness. Lena, yes, you can eventually control your anger if you understand its nature. The next deep awareness is like the deep awareness of mind itself. Right? There's six kinds of consciousness, like eye, ear, nose, mouth, skin, and awareness itself. Right? You have eye awareness. It's not like we're not talking about your eyeball. We're talking about the vision of things, right? Seeing things. Then you have the things of taste, hearing, smell, taste, you know, sensations of your body, like wearing nice clothes on your skin, right? That feel really good. And awareness itself, right? You can analyze each of those things. So I've been analyzing this for about 6 months now, like vision, like my sense organs of my eyes, right? And they don't function the way they're supposed to. They discovered I have some kind of, they call it a palsy. One of the nerves in the back of my head here doesn't work normally for some reason. So then it screws up like the vision processing, and they give me all the explanations of what the hell's going on, right? But the cool thing about what I've been learning is that I'm going to take all of you on a field trip to this doctor's office and prove to you that your eyeball does not work the way you think your eyeball is working. They showed me that my eyes don't see anything. All my eyes see are colors and shapes. They don't see anything. It's the brain that puts the information together. Right? You think you're looking out the window at the mountains and at the porch and the umbrella and the sun that's about to rise over the come up over the horizon, right? But you're not seeing any of it. Right? Your awareness of the world is not what you think the awareness is. The main hubris of science is thinking that they can describe the outer world objectively without their senses. You know, oh, we're going to look at this universe and all different spectrums of light. We'll look in the visible light. Visible light is the light that our eyeballs can see, right? Well, we can't see infrared frequencies, wavelengths. We can't see ultraviolet wavelengths, right? We can't see certain radio. Like if we could see all the radio frequencies around us, all the cell phone waves coming through, right? It would just be a big mess of you wouldn't be able to see anything. It'd just be a big mess of information. Right. So we think the outer world is what we see. Now we're going to describe it. We're going to describe everything we see. But we're not seeing, I mean, if you could see in the infrared wavelengths, you could see the different temperatures of things. Right? I can't tell you how warm or cold it is across the mountain over there with my eyeball. Right? Oh, sure, if there's some snow on it, you can guess using logic that it's colder over on the mountain than it is here. But your eye never sees anything. Your eye does not see anything. But you think that's the world. You open your eyes and you go, that's the world. That's the sun rising. That's the mountain. See? Right? That's the world. There's my red umbrella that blocks the sun so I can teach. Right? So all of those things does this view here exist by its own, exist on its own? Right? Is it there by itself? Like, why do I have eyeballs that see, quote, visible light? Right? What else is going on in the world that I'm not seeing? I don't see all the cell phone towers, right? I don't see all of the waves, all the radios that are coming off of that. I don't see infrared. And there's so many things that I'm not perceiving right now. And somehow I think this is the world. And that's what you think is there. And that's why you get confused. Right? But so having a deep awareness of each of the consciousnesses and understanding that what's happening is not what you think is happening. And why is it important? Right? That's the other part. Like, why is it important to like think this way? The fourth deep awareness, which we kind of covered, is just the deep awareness of objects. Like any object you know, in fact, anything you perceive is an object. So like whether you're perceiving your senses or you're perceiving your body or you're perceiving one of the feelings, right? Those are all objects. So just having a deep awareness of objects themselves. How does something become something? Right? That was just question number one of the homeworks. So more stuff, more questions here, right? Why do we care? That's the next part. Why do we care about this? Oh, I'm sorry. You guys had the, now you can see better. I had the filter on. Okay. But why did you have the karma to not see it well? Right. Whatever. But who cares? I mean, the question is, who cares? Like, what's the point? Okay. Yeah. I only see certain colors. I see yellow, blues, greens, purples, reds, oranges. Right. I don't see infrared. Who cares? Right. I still can function. I can live. True. But why, how does this cause, what is the point? The main point is that this is the reason why we suffer. This is the reason why, this is the source of all conflict. All the things that go on. And so someone asks the questions, right, in the Abhidharma, right? I don't know if they ask it there or not, but you ask the question. There's 46 mental functions that the Buddha describes in the Abhidharma. It's a fascinating topic. It's so boring. Some people like it. It's not I'm not interested that much. I am interested, but not in this way. But if there's 46 mental functions, why did the Buddha separate them out? Why did he separate out feeling and discrimination and put them in a pile of their own, in their heap, the pungpo, the 5 heaps? Why did feeling and discrimination get their own heap when there's 46 mental functions in general? Boring question, right? Who cares? The main answer is because those two, mainly feeling and discrimination, mainly, oh, there's these really cute birds. Let's see. Anyway, sorry. It's kind of cool when you move to a new place and you notice all the new things. So those two things, discrimination and feeling, are the source of all conflict. They are the cause. Why? Because discrimination is what separates me from you, that separates them from me. That's my family. That's not my family. I'm going to take care of those kids because they're mine. And I'm not going to take care of these kids because they're yours. Right? On this side, actually, which way is south? South is that way. Okay. 100 miles that way, there's a line in the dirt. On the other side of that line is where Francisco lives. Not right on the other side, but he lives in a town right on, and I live on this side of the line, right? If you go to the line in the desert, where's the line? Right? Oh, I'll tell you where the line is, because someone put a fence up. Someone put a fence up between the United States and Mexico in the desert, right? That's the line. This side of the line is Mexico. The other side of the line is United States. The money on this side of the line let's say social services in Mexico only pay for people that are on this side. But if someone's standing right on the edge of the fence being like, help me, sorry, you're on that side of the fence. You have to get help from the United States government. They'll help you over there. Over here, we can't help you. Right? Why did we decide, if you take away the fence, why did we decide this line is where we stop defining ourselves? This side defines itself as Mexican. This side defines itself as United Statesian. Okay. But why is that line there? We just made it's random, right? Mainly. Oh, well, someone will say, well, the line is based on geography. Shut up. Like you just created a line. It doesn't matter. You could have made the line over there or 10 miles that way. It doesn't matter. Right. But we create these lines, you and me. Your religion believes this about God. My religion believes this about God. You're wrong. And so, oh, you're so wrong that I'm going to start a war and kill you because your wrongness is so wrong for the world because my God says this. Does that sound familiar to anybody? United Airlines, global services. We're going to take care of people who are global services, but everyone else who just buys a normal ticket, you're okay. Good luck. Right. You get the really small meal. You don't get to jump the line. You don't get to relax. You don't get the nice card at your seat. You don't have everyone saying thank you for your service. You're just sitting in the back of the airplane, which is what's going to happen, Francisco, when we get on our plane to go to Kyoto together. Unfortunately, you're not global services, but I am, right? It's funny, right? I've traveled enough that, oh, now you're like famous, Tim. You're a VIP on United Airlines, right? It's their it's their secret. You don't know how you get into global. You have no idea how you get into global services. Like they have a profile of someone and who knows, right? Karma, right? My karma created a distinction between some travelers and other travelers, right? So I get treated differently. I have seen, anyway, but the point is like, look, we make those distinctions and those distinctions make conflict. We're going to take care of global services people a lot better than we're going to take care of the normal traveler because they're not as important. Those people aren't as important as these people. What? This person's more influential than that person, so we're going to give them more perks. This person spends more money on United Airlines. Oh, okay. So we're going to treat them better. It's really not, I'm not actually making fun of it. I like it. It helps me tremendously. Like I don't have to wait in lines. Anytime that I'm late, they help me not be late. Right. Anytime the plane is, they have it all figured out for me. I can call them and jump the line. No more than 30 seconds do I ever have to wait to talk to someone on the phone at United Airlines. I can call them from around the world. Doesn't matter, right? Great. But do you know what it feels like when you're not global services and everyone is looking at the global services people and seeing the way they get treated? I can't always fly on United because they don't go to every city in the world. Right. And sometimes, the cheaper flight is the better flight, right? Time is better, and then you realize how annoying it is to not be global services and how people treat you, right? Even the airline employees. So they treat me differently. And it doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't like Then you get indignant. I can't believe you're treating me this way. I paid this same amount of money as everyone else. Right. In fact, I paid more money than you're right. Whatever the irritation is about. You see, so this discrimination and then creates also good feelings and bad feelings. You want more good feelings and you want less bad feelings. And then you're willing to do anything to feel good, to avoid the bad feeling and then to feel the good feelings. When you really think about it, if you take that into your meditation, then you can kind of see the source of conflict between people. You know what global services did for me? It made me a nicer person. Like I'm overly nice at the airport. Like I thank everybody. I don't expect to be treated any better. It's nice to get on the plane first. It kind of is. But, it's actually made me realize like the sort of the ways that I discriminate people. And so it's like, just say hi to people, just thank them, regardless if you're global services or not. Thank the people at the airport. Do you know how awful it is to like stand there and just have people yelling at you all day long because something's late that wasn't your fault? It's not the person at the gate's fault that the plane is late. They didn't do anything. Last time I was at the airport, it's just I was flying. It was a 40-minute flight to California. Okay. Shortest flight ever. We got on the plane didn't start. They tried to make the plane start, it didn't start. Then they brought the maintenance on. They thought they fixed it. We went out to the runway, then the plane didn't start again. Right? They're like, well, we gotta change flights, folks. This isn't gonna work. Do you have any idea how mad people were? I'm like, oh, you wanted that plane to take off? It should just work. I paid for this. Okay, yes, you did. But okay, let's have it break when we're taking off and moving at 500 kilometers an hour and see how that feels when it doesn't land softly, right? And then I went into my bougie lounge. Okay, that's a good word for translators to know. Bougie is like bourgeois from the French, right? So I got to skip the line to get my flight changed because obviously we weren't going to make flights. I was chatting with this lady. We were having a nice time. Then I went to sit down, and the guy behind me, he was like, he was so mad. He was like, I paid a first class ticket for this flight, and I need to get first class on the next flight that's going to LA. It's a 40-minute flight, folks, first of all, right? And the lady's like, well, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but that flight's full. Like the flight you were on didn't work. So I can give you a refund, but and this guy like lost his mind that he didn't have a first class ticket on a 40-minute flight that he was already delayed on. And this guy yelled. It was embarrassing. Like I was like, whoa. He paid all this money, so therefore he deserves a good seat on a plane that's already full because our plane broke. And this lady, she's not the mechanic at all. She sits in front of a computer and listens to people yell all day long about getting on the correct flight. You see, like source of conflict. And look at it in yourself. Next time that you get upset, try to understand, well, it's me or them, right? It's me against them. I have feelings. Oh, I want to feel good, or I feel bad. All of those things are not self-existent, but yet you're willing to do things that hurt other people to get what you want. You're willing to yell at the lady at the airport who's just trying to get you to your destination as quickly as possible. She can't change the flight. She can't change the mechanics. She can't change that something broke, right? So these are things that you can analyze that get you closer to the place where you can go, oh, this is coming from me. This feeling is coming from me. These feelings in my body is if I break, like, if you start getting into the habit of this kind of analysis, your world will be completely weird because you'll go up to someone at the airport and you're all upset because your flight has been, delayed, and 20 people in front of you have been upset, and it's taking you 2 hours to even get to the front of the line because you're not global services. Sorry. Right. And then, you know, and then all of a sudden you start analyzing it. And then you have to battle yourself because then you're going to start thinking, oh God. And then you're like, this is coming from me. These parts of my anger are in different parts of my body. And then you're just like, this does not compute. Like you go into a like syntax error. Right. You want to be angry, but you know that it's coming from you. You understand that the parts are just parts that have come together that you labeled as anger, you see. And then it becomes like it's like a dharmic schizophrenia where you're like in two different places at once and you're like, and everyone's like, are you okay? And you're like, I'll be fine. Right. Some of you have probably seen that for me. I'm just like, I'll be fine. Just shut up for a second. Right. And let it kind of move. Like a lot of it is really, how do I say this? The other kind of nature of feelings is if you feel the whole thing, then you might not actually have to feel it anymore. That's just an aside comment. So oftentimes you've heard this word of like things are impure, like pure feeling or impure feeling, right? It's kind of just another word for ignorant. You misunderstand the object. So I have an impure feeling, anger. It feels pretty damn pure to me. That's pure anger. But what we mean is that you misunderstand the object that you're angry at. You misunderstand the feeling itself. And then you're willing to do something bad to either get away from the anger or to create a good feeling. Right? You're willing to yell at someone who's not at fault to finally be not angry anymore. I'm sorry, it sucks to be angry, right? It feels terrible. And then you're like, I gotta get this, I gotta, then this power overcomes you. It's a force that's just incredible. And then you're willing to do something to stop the anger, which usually means, doing something that plants a bad seed. Okay, so here's another way to look at it. Okay, we got more ways to look at it. That wasn't enough. Everyone's like, Tim, I get it. They're not self existent. Yeah, you get it until you get angry or get sad or you get tired or you get bored, right? Then you're gonna be like, I'm so bored with Tim's class. Like Oh, really? You know, so here's some more proofs that you can put into your mind to help you maybe stop being so angry or upset at something. So let's use feelings of pain as an example, right? If those things were self-existent, meaning they were, it was just pain because it's pain, right? Didn't happen because of some other causes or some other dependence, something like that. If pain were that, the pain could never turn into pleasure. If your pain were self-existent, the feeling of pain, and they didn't depend on your projections, they could never turn into anything else ever. Because if something is there by itself independently, it can't change. So it would always have to be pain. You would always have to be experiencing pain, irrespective of what you did to get rid of the pain. And you have to really think about that one for a while. Like, how is it that something that is self or not self-existent, excuse me, something that you take as self-existent, how could it be considered unchangeable? You know, because I mean, I look at my house and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to paint that deck at some point because yeah, that would need some treatment, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. It's like it's sitting in the sun all day long. You know, it's 20 years old. Of course, it changes. Like, and somehow I still take it to be independent of myself. It looks like it changes, right? And over time, it seems to do that. So what is the so this is where you have to think about it for quite a while. I can accept that things change, but somehow I still take them as self-existent. It self-existently changes on its own out there, you know, and how does that how does that line up with me being considering things are unchangeable versus changeable? That if pain were out there by itself, it couldn't change into something else. You know, you have to think about it. I'm sorry. Like it just so just think about it. And another example that Shantideva uses is sort of the opposite. How are feelings of pleasure not self-existent? Okay. And he uses an example. It took me a while to get it. Let's say you're a parent and your only child has just died. Okay. You've loved this child for for their whole life. And then that only child dies of some sickness. And they die. And then you have this experience of grief. Like you are like the overwhelming feeling of pain and grief and loss is just flowing through you. And those of you who are parents probably fear this. more than anything else for them and for you. So I come up to you, you're feeling terrible, and I hand you a cookie. Okay, you're like, what? Just hold on. I hand you a cookie. I hand you a chocolate chip cookie, right? Which I know you love, which I know brings you joy. Every time you've gotten a chocolate chip cookie in your life, you've been super excited. All right. So you're experiencing this grief, and I hand you a chocolate chip cookie. If the feelings have their own nature, then when I hand you that cookie, you should be happy. And not only a little happy, you should be fully happy. All of your grief should be gone. And in fact, you could even argue that even the smallest pleasure, if it were self existent, would be a pure self existent pleasure. And it would be the greatest of all pleasures. There wouldn't be any gradient of pleasure or feeling good. It wouldn't be like, oh, I feel a little good and a little sad. You would just always feel that, right? But the idea, Lena, is that it's temporary, like they're not temporary. If a feeling is self existent, you should always have it. It shouldn't be something that just comes up for no reason at all, right? And even the idea that if you lost your only child and creates grief, there's no how do I say this? There's no necessary reason that you would feel grief. Just because most people feel grief doesn't mean that grief is the emotion that has to come up in that moment. Oh, I just lost my husband. We got divorced. What do you think people feel like when they get divorced? Oh, it feels awful. This person says, finally, I'm happy. I got rid of him. Like, I don't have to see this asshole anymore, right? Divorce does not create good or bad feelings. Death doesn't create good or bad feelings, right? Chocolate chip cookies don't create good or bad feelings. Because if they did, they would always create, if chocolate chip cookies were the cause of good feelings, then a chocolate chip cookie would always create a good feeling because I like chocolate chip cookies. So if you have a bad experience with chocolate chip cookies, then the chocolate chip cookies couldn't be the cause of it. Same thing about divorce. Some people are happy, some people are sad, some people are both happy and sad. Therefore, the divorce didn't cause those feelings. The death of your child did not cause that feeling, right? So these are things you have to dive into and think about. Did you get upset when you got a divorce? Yes. Did it feel like the divorce caused the upset? Yes, it does. Were you upset before you got divorced? No. So the divorce was the cause. It looks like that. And I'm not trying to say the divorce didn't bring on the sadness or the happiness, but they're not connected. They're not the deeper cause. That's why these are all called the deep awarenesses. Because when you analyze it, you go, something's not the way I think it is. Like the other day, I was at Diamond Mountain and I twisted in a weird way. And I felt, without any kind of emotion, I felt a nerve in my back get pinched. I felt all the muscles along my hip bone tense up, seize up. I felt the whole thing happening. And I was like, huh, that's happening. But I didn't feel pain. It wasn't until later that I decided that somehow it became painful. Right? Now it was like this weird moment of, that's happening. But it didn't get it registered as pain. Previously, I would have been like, oh, my back hurts, right? And it does, it fucking hurts. Right? It's painful. And you can't move well and all of those things. But for a split second, there was a separation between what was happening and my feeling about what was happening. So did it have to be pain, or was it just a tight muscle with a little bit of pinched nerve on top? Right? So the pain wasn't in my body. Get it? Eventually it became painful because I couldn't hold that viewpoint. But that's the idea, is that, can you separate what's happening from the reaction? Can you look at things and be like, am I actually looking at what I think I'm looking at? Most people had no idea that I was in pain, right? They were like, well, you look really happy. I'm like, yeah, I'm happy. And my back hurts a lot. Right? But it didn't affect my mood mostly. So, and then eventually, that's where you start building this muscle, like to understand where are things coming from? Why am I experiencing what I'm doing? And then you're able to release it and then have a total different experience of the world. And if you can then release it to the point of understanding that the parts that you're putting together were never parts of the thing you're looking at in the first place, then you have this possibility of an incredible change. All right. We did not get to the last question. I thought I was going to. In the original class, Geshe Michael didn't get to the last question. I was like, I'll get through all of it. Now I see why. So we'll pick up next week on the last question of the homework. I suggest doing the reading and trying to understand it first. And then we're going to continue going deeper into emptiness. We're going to be talking about dependent origination. We're going to be talking about proofs of emptiness. We're going to be talking about the gotcha as well, the object that we deny, the thing that you think is there that's not there. Yay. Cool. Happy Wednesday morning. Thank you, translators. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, recording people. And we'll be back next week, exactly, for class 8. So say goodbye to each other. And if you're sticking around, we have Lam Rim in a half an hour. Thank you.
Gracias, Tim.
Muchas gracias, Maestro Tim.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Tim.
Tim. Thank you, everyone.
Gracias, Maestro Tim. Por favor, quédate.
谢谢 Tim 老师。
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
谢谢 Tim 老师。
Ciao.
Ciao. Please stay.